The great question. Imagine waking up one day in a house that has everything you ever said you wanted. The air conditioning hums at the perfect temperature. The bed beneath you cradles your back with memory foam precision. The coffee brews automatically in the kitchen, and your calendar has no emergencies, only reminders for minor, manageable things. There is food in the fridge, Wi-Fi is fast, notifications light up your screen, reminding you of people who haven't forgotten you. You are safe, you are stable, you are numb. Not in pain, not unhappy, but not quite alive either. Something unnameable feels off. It's the kind of emptiness you don't talk about at dinner parties. You have no reason to be miserable, and yet, somewhere between the grocery store and the morning commute, you've misplaced something essential. Not your keys, not your wallet. Something deeper, your fire, perhaps. That strange, irrational sense of purpose that used to make your chest tighten with anticipation. Where did it go? You scroll, you snack, you sleep. You watch videos that promise to fix your life in 10 steps and follow influencers who post morning routines like digital gospel. You're doing everything you're supposed to, aren't you? You've cut off toxic people. You've started journaling. You've made boundaries, bought self-help books, maybe even tried meditation for a week. But still, when you pause long enough to listen, truly listen, you hear a low, persistent echo in your bones. Is this all there is? And more disturbingly, what if comfort is the very thing that's killing me? We were told to chase comfort, that once we had it, we would finally be free from chaos, from pain, from the threat of suffering that haunted previous generations. We were sold the idea that comfort equaled happiness, that safety was synonymous with meaning, that if we could just eliminate discomfort, we'd reach peace. But peace without struggle often decays into stagnation. Without the friction of adversity, how does one grow? Without the resistance of real consequence, how do you sharpen the soul? There is something quietly suffocating about perpetual ease, and perhaps the most terrifying part of it is this. When life gets too easy, it no longer demands anything from you, and slowly, you stop demanding anything of yourself. Do you ever feel that you're becoming a ghost of yourself, fully present, technically alive, but not really here? Going through the motions, performing the script of a well-adjusted adult, yet haunted by the suspicion that you're not living your life so much as consuming it? And deeper still, that you've been sedated, not by some malevolent force, but by the very comforts you once prayed for. Why is it that the more we wrap ourselves in comfort, the more our spirit seems to shrink? Why is it that anxiety rises in silence, boredom swells in stillness, and depression often blooms in the softest places, on the couch, under warm blankets, scrolling through a screen that offers everything but intimacy? What if the problem isn't that something is wrong, but that nothing is happening? What if the real cost of a comfortable life isn't stress or exhaustion, but the slow erosion of meaning? What if we've mistaken convenience for freedom, entertainment for joy, and numbness for peace? There's a chilling line from Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. They don't need to ban books. They just need to make people stop caring about them. In a world where suffering is minimized, where distractions are infinite, and friction is engineered away, what becomes of the soul that was forged to wrestle with complexity, not escape it? What becomes of the mind that once questioned the stars, now fed with algorithmic precision and dopamine snacks? Have we traded purpose for predictability, mystery for management, depth for efficiency? Look around you. Look at your own life. When was the last time you did something that genuinely terrified you? Something that demanded every ounce of your attention, something that made you feel real again, not just seen, not just liked, but alive. The machinery of comfort is seductive because it asks nothing in return. But perhaps that's exactly the danger, that over time you forget what it means to struggle well, to suffer for something meaningful, to build character not out of curated routines but from contact with real friction. So here's the question that will haunt the rest of this journey. What if the very thing we're told to chase, comfort, is the reason we feel so lost? What if the path to a meaningful life doesn't lie in eliminating discomfort, but in learning how to suffer more intelligently, more purposefully, more consciously? What if the cage we're trying to escape isn't made of pain, but of pillows? Let's explore what lies beneath this paradox. Let's peel back the skin of comfort and see what it's really doing to us. psychologically, spiritually, and existentially. Because once you understand the hidden machinery behind this soul-shrinking state, you may never look at your cozy, curated life the same way again. The hidden problem. Its psychological, philosophical roots. We have been taught, almost from the moment we could understand language, that comfort is the goal, that security is synonymous with safety, that happiness means the absence of pain, and so we build our lives around insulation, emotional insulation, financial insulation, social insulation. We gravitate toward the known, the soft, the padded. We make decisions not because they are right, but because they are easy. We walk paths not because they challenge us, but because they are paved, well-lit, and free of thorns. Yet something inside us whispers, a quiet dissonance beneath the hum of convenience. It is the feeling that something is missing, that our lives, despite their predictability, are somehow empty. This dissonance is not a flaw in us. It is the friction between our biology, our deeper nature, and the structure of the world we've built around us. We were not made to be comfortable. We were made to grow, and growth by its very nature is uncomfortable. Carl Jung warned that when we live only in the persona, the mask we wear to maintain societal approval, we alienate ourselves from the shadow, the hidden parts of us that carry our instinct, our creativity, our potential for wholeness. And what is modern comfort if not a culture of perfected personas? We curate our identities, smooth our edges, suppress anything that disrupts harmony, and in doing so, we sacrifice authenticity on the altar of ease. The soul shrinks not because we are doing something wrong, but because we are obeying too well. Jung would call this psychic atrophy, the slow erosion of the self when it is no longer challenged to become. Nietzsche, too, raged against the cult of comfort. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he described the last man, a creature who avoids all risk, seeks only comfort and entertainment, and lives a safe but hollow life. They have left the regions where it was hard to live, he wrote, for one needs warmth. The last man no longer creates, no longer aspires to greatness. He does not suffer, and so he does not grow. He merely persists. Nietzsche saw this as the death of the human spirit. Without the struggle, without the fire of becoming, we cease to be human in any meaningful way. We become tame animals in padded cages, well-fed and slowly dying. The paradox, then, is this: the more we chase comfort, the more uncomfortable we become with ourselves. The more we try to eliminate risk, the more fragile we grow. The more we numb pain, the more hollow joy becomes. The very thing we seek, happiness, meaning, peace, begins to rot under the weight of its own avoidance. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist, spoke of the existential vacuum, a state in which individuals feel a deep inner void, not because of suffering, but because of the lack of meaning. Meaning, he argued, is not found in comfort, but in struggle, particularly the kind of struggle that serves something greater than the self. Without this, life becomes flat, not tragic, not painful, just flat. Modern society has institutionalized this vacuum. Education teaches us to seek stable jobs, not to pursue dangerous ideas. Advertising trains us to want ease, not depth. Technology offers us constant dopamine hits, likes, notifications, streaming content, but starves us of real emotional nutrition. We are taught to pathologize discomfort, to fear boredom, to outsource our inner worlds to algorithms. We scroll instead of feel. We consume instead of create. We manage symptoms instead of asking what caused the illness in the first place. And all of this is dressed up as progress. But underneath it lies a subtle but powerful psychological distortion, the belief that life is something to be optimized rather than something to be lived. This is a profound error. Optimization seeks efficiency, but the soul thrives in inefficiency. You cannot schedule awe, you cannot hack wonder, you cannot microwave transformation. And yet we try, over and over again, to streamline what should be sacred. We reduce the richness of being into to-do lists and productivity apps, believing that if we just manage our lives well enough, we will finally feel whole. But wholeness does not arrive through comfort. It arrives through confrontation, especially confrontation with ourselves. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard described despair as the sickness unto death, a kind of spiritual paralysis that arises not from external suffering, but from internal evasion. He argued that we fall into despair when we are afraid to become the self we are meant to be. And often, that fear is masked as convenience. It's easier not to try. It's easier not to confront our shadow. It's easier to accept a life of quiet suffocation than to risk failure or heartbreak or truth. But that ease comes at a cost. Over time, it calcifies into a kind of emotional poverty. We may appear fine on the outside, even successful, but inwardly, we are starving. Even our relationships are shaped by this cult of comfort. We avoid conflict because we are afraid of rupture. We choose familiarity over depth. We surround ourselves with people who validate us, not those who challenge us. We seek connection without vulnerability, intimacy without exposure. But without friction, there is no fire. Without risk, there is no real love, only polite companionship masquerading as affection. We forget that real relationships, like real growth, require discomfort. They require the death of the ego, the dismantling of illusion. They require that we be willing to lose the version of ourselves that is liked in order to become the version of ourselves that is true. So what is the hidden cost of a comfortable life? It is the atrophy of the soul. It is the slow, silent decay of our potential. It is the quiet suffocation of our capacity to feel deeply, to strive boldly, to love fiercely. It is not a dramatic tragedy, but a gradual dimming, a flicker of light that fades not because it was extinguished, but because it was never fed. And the most unsettling part, we often don't even notice it happening, because comfort, when normalized, does not feel like a trap. It feels like success. But deep down, a part of us knows better. A part of us aches for something more. That ache, the quiet longing, the subtle discontent, is not a flaw. It is the soul's resistance to shrinkage. It is the whisper of the self, still alive beneath the layers of convenience and caution, and it will not go away, because it is trying to wake you up. The unseen consequences. Look closely at the world around you, not just its surface, but the invisible tremors beneath it, and you'll start to sense the cost of our comfort worship. It's not dramatic or obvious at first. It creeps quietly into conversations, into policies, into our own thoughts and reactions. We snap when our coffee order is wrong. We spiral when we're left on read. We crumble under criticism and call it toxicity. The smallest discomfort now feels catastrophic because we've lost the internal muscle that once allowed us to bear weight. What we are witnessing is not just a rise in anxiety or burnout, it is a full-scale spiritual erosion where the very soil of human resilience has been worn thin by decades of ease. This is not to shame the anxious, the depressed, the burnt out. Quite the opposite. It is to reveal that their suffering is not personal failure. It's the predictable result of a culture that never taught them how to suffer meaningfully. Think of how quickly we pathologize emotional pain today. A breakup? There's a pill. A job loss? Immediate reframing. A moment of loneliness? Distract yourself. Swipe, scroll, shop. It's as if the mere presence of discomfort is unacceptable, a problem to be erased rather than understood. But suffering, when faced consciously, is not the enemy. It is a signal, a message, a doorway. Pain, in its deepest form, is the psyche's way of asking for your attention. Yet we don't listen. We numb. We outsource our inner work to algorithms, to life hacks, to corporate wellness seminars. And in doing so, we train ourselves to respond to life not with courage, but with escape. The result is a society of people who look composed on the outside, but are hollowed out within. They are not weak. They are undertrained. They were taught that healing is quick, that meaning is instant, that discomfort is optional. But these are lies, and deep down, we know they are. We see it in rising rates of existential crisis, in the endless pursuit of novelty, in the inability to be alone with our thoughts for more than a few seconds without reaching for a distraction. Even our relationships are affected. When things get hard, when intimacy brings up old wounds, when conflict requires patience and self-reflection, how quickly do we run? We ghost, we quit, we label, we say, "This just isn't for me," when in truth, we were never taught how to endure the discomfort that growth demands. And what's more tragic, we start to see other people not as complex souls worthy of engagement, but as comfort objects, tools to regulate our own emotions. And when they fail to do that, we dispose of them. Behind the scenes of our digital lives and curated smiles is a rising wave of loneliness. Not because we are physically alone, but because we have forgotten how to be with the messiness of others and with the messiness of ourselves. In this way, the consequences of comfort addiction extend far beyond the individual. They shape entire cultures. Take our political discourse, increasingly polarized, allergic to nuance, reactive rather than reflective. Why? Because to hold conflicting ideas in your mind, to sit in ambiguity, to truly empathize with a viewpoint you disagree with, that requires discomfort. Intellectual humility is painful, so instead we retreat to ideological comfort zones. We build echo chambers. We scream instead of listen. We cancel instead of converse. Our public square is now filled with the emotional equivalent of toddlers demanding their version of reality be validated instantly and without challenge. It is not because people are stupid, it is because they are terrified. Terrified of being wrong, of being uncertain, of being exposed. And this terror is the direct child of a comfort-obsessed culture that equates disagreement with danger and struggle with failure. Even spirituality has not escaped this. Erosion. In the past, spiritual disciplines demanded sacrifice, pilgrimages, fasting, silent retreats, dark nights of the soul. But now, in many places, spirituality has become a lifestyle. Brand. Suffering is photoshopped. Enlightenment is sold in 5 steps or less. And the inner work required to truly confront the soul's shadow, the ancient sacred work of transformation, is replaced with affirmations and incense. There's nothing wrong with positivity. But when it becomes a bypass, when it denies the crucible of pain through which wisdom is born, it becomes another distraction, another escape, another lie. And so we ask, where does this lead? A society that cannot tolerate discomfort cannot sustain freedom, because freedom requires responsibility, and responsibility is heavy. A people trained only to pursue pleasure will vote for ease, not truth. They will choose safety over authenticity, comfort over challenge, control over chaos. They will become, as Nietzsche feared, the herd, demanding not greatness, but sameness. The dangerous thing about the modern world isn't that people are bad, it's that people are no longer willing to hurt for something greater than themselves. They will suffer, but only in ways that feel accidental, meaningless, disconnected. True suffering, the kind that opens the heart, that breaks the ego, that builds character, is almost extinct. We have all the tools to make life more bearable, but we lack the inner scaffolding to carry its deeper purpose. Perhaps this is the cost of progress. Perhaps every civilization that makes life easier also risks forgetting why life is worth living. And yet, this is not a doomsday prophecy. It is a call. Because all the evidence, all the warning signs point toward a simple truth. We must learn to suffer better, not more, not masochistically, but better, with awareness, with courage, with meaning. It is time to reclaim discomfort as sacred, to see it not as failure, but as initiation. Because the moment we start to walk into our pain rather than around it is the moment we begin to awaken. And once we awaken, we remember what we've forgotten, that it was never about being comfortable, it was about becoming real. How to build the inner life in a world addicted to ease. Begin here with a single question, quietly asked. Who would you be if all the screens went dark? If the distractions disappeared? If the world stopped offering you things to lean on and you were left with only yourself? Most people, if they're honest, would admit they've never truly been alone. Not the kind of solitude that strips you down to the scaffolding of your soul. Instead, we live half distracted, always in search of something to plug the inner gap, noise, novelty, validation. But when you strip it all away, what's left? That is your inner life. And for many today, it's an abandoned house. The door creaks. The walls are bare. Dust collects where conviction used to live. The tragedy isn't that people are weak. It's that they've been conditioned to outsource their strength. They've forgotten that spiritual architecture, like any house, must be built brick by brick. And it begins with discomfort. Not grand gestures, not retreats to mountaintops, just the daily discipline of turning toward the difficult instead of away from it. Because what you avoid runs your life in secret. What you face becomes part of your soul. So how do you begin to build the inner life in a world so bent on dismantling it? You start by practicing the lost art of stillness. Not scrolling, not relaxing with Netflix. True stillness. Sit with yourself. No phone, no music, no agenda. Just sit and observe what happens inside you. The restlessness, the irritability, the quiet panic. Let it rise. That's the detox. You are witnessing the withdrawal from overstimulation. You are meeting the unprocessed emotions that silence has patiently held for years. Most people can't do this for more than 5 minutes before they reach for a screen. That's how fragile our attention has become. But if you can hold your seat, breathe and stay, something strange begins to occur. The noise begins to soften, the mind stops screaming, and beneath the surface, something stirs. Awareness, clarity, maybe even a trace of peace. This is not enlightenment. It's not supposed to be. It's the start of excavation. And every great life begins with excavation. The courageous work of digging beneath the false self the world trained you to perform. The second step is equally ancient and overlooked. Discipline. In a culture that celebrates spontaneity, discipline is often mistaken for rigidity or self-denial. But real discipline is liberation. It is the path that allows you to reclaim agency over your attention, your body, your time. Discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent with what matters most, especially when it's hard. Wake up at the same time. Move your body. Read books that challenge you. Meditate, even when it's boring. Write about your pain. These are not glamorous acts. They are sacred ones. Each repetition is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Because the truth is, the inner life doesn't just appear one day like a thunderclap of wisdom. It emerges slowly, like a plant breaking through the concrete of comfort, and discipline is the water. Next comes what might be the most difficult step of all, developing what the mystics called holy attention. This means paying attention not just to what is happening, but to how it is shaping you. When you feel anger, instead of just reacting, you ask, what is this pointing to? When you feel sadness, you do not suppress it. You sit with it and ask what is asking to be grieved. When you are rejected, you do not collapse. You explore the wound beneath the wound. This is not self-obsession, it is self-responsibility. It is understanding that every emotional trigger is a teacher, and every time you meet it with curiosity instead of shame, you grow a little deeper into yourself. You are not just surviving life anymore. You are partnering with it, learning from it, letting it refine you. But no inner life can be built in isolation. Solitude is essential, but so is community. And not the surface-level community of likes and comments. Real community, the kind that sees you without needing to fix you. The kind that tells the truth even when it's uncomfortable. The kind that shows up when you're a mess and stays anyway. Most people don't have this. They have performance circles, social contracts built on shared masks. But the inner life demands real mirrors, people who help you see yourself clearly, people who remind you of your highest self when you've forgotten it, people who are not afraid to walk with you through the valley because they've walked their own. If you find even one such person, protect that bond, nurture it, because nothing awakens the soul more than being truly seen and still loved. Now here's the paradox. As your inner life grows, the world will feel more chaotic, not less. You'll begin to notice how loud everything is, how shallow most interactions are, how much of society is built on avoiding truth. You may even feel lonelier at first. That's because you are deconditioning. You are unplugging from a matrix of meaninglessness. Don't panic. This is part of the path. You are not becoming disconnected. You are becoming real, and that process will burn. You will shed identities. You will lose relationships. You will grieve versions of yourself that were built only to survive, not to live. But what emerges on the other side is something rare, a person with depth, a person who can sit with pain and not flinch, a person who does not need to be understood to know their worth, a person who, in a world drowning in performance, chooses authenticity, even when it costs them everything. Finally, you must remember that this work is never finished. The inner life is not a project you complete. It is a relationship you cultivate. Some days you'll feel strong, other days you'll feel broken. Both are holy, both are human. What matters is that you keep returning to the stillness, to the breath, to the body, to the truth, over and over. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours. In a world addicted to ease, the hardest path is to feel, to think, to grow. But it is also the only path that leads home. The ultimate truth, the final, most powerful realization. But what if the soul's true nourishment was never safety, but friction? What if the final paradox, the one we never want to face, is that the very discomfort we have been taught to avoid is the very soil in which our authenticity takes root? The truth, raw and unvarnished, is that the soul doesn't shrink from adversity. It's starved by stagnation. You've been led to believe that peace comes when nothing threatens you, that success means never needing anything again. But a truth far more ancient and unsettling pulses beneath the surface of that belief. It is not comfort, but confrontation with the real that awakens your soul. In a world obsessed with numbing every form of unease, we've forgotten the art of necessary suffering, the kind that awakens you, not wounds you. Think of it. The caterpillar must dissolve entirely into a mess of undifferentiated goo before it becomes the butterfly. There is no compromise, no shortcut, no tranquil path to flight. It must lose everything it was, and so must we. The comfortable life promises the opposite. It offers just enough stimulation to keep you from screaming, just enough validation to keep you from leaving, just enough dopamine to keep you addicted to your own decay. It lulls you into a dreamless sleep where you forget what it ever felt like to be truly alive. But under the noise, under the sedation, your soul remembers. It aches, not because it desires more ease, but because it remembers the taste of awe. And here lies the final and most powerful realization. The comfort you cling to is not your sanctuary. It is your tomb. And every time you silence your inner discontent with another distraction, you are adding another stone to that quiet mausoleum. But you are not meant to be embalmed in routines. You are not meant to live and die within padded walls. You are not meant to spend your life avoiding the sharp edges of truth. You are meant to burn, not in torment, but in passion, in purpose, in a heat that dissolves every lie you've been fed about who you are and what you need. That kind of fire doesn't destroy the self, it reveals it. And when that happens, when you finally step through the ash of your old comforts, you meet something far more profound than happiness. You meet meaning. Not the kind that comes wrapped in motivational quotes or TED Talks, but the kind that settles in your bones, the kind that leaves scars, not because you were broken, but because you were forged. The world may offer you 100,000 ways to stay small, to stay safe, to stay numb. It may whisper that rest is better than risk, that pleasure is better than purpose, that silence is better than honesty. But you must choose, not once, but again and again, because every day, in ways both big and quiet, you are asked, will you comfort yourself into oblivion, or will you dare to awaken? You already know the cost of comfort. It's the subtle ache that never leaves, the dreams you put off until later, the vague but persistent feeling that something essential has gone missing. But the cost of awakening, it's your illusions, your false identities, your need for approval, your carefully curated safety. And in exchange, you receive yourself, whole, undivided, awake. That's the ultimate truth. You are not here to survive comfort, you are here to survive truth. And in doing so, to become something far more real than anything the world has ever told you to be. So ask yourself, in the quiet hours when no one is watching, wow. When there is no applause or distraction, do you want to be comfortable, or do you want to be free?